Is it weird for me to say I'm excited for the day we both be with the door open? I know that might sound gross, but that's the kind of love you only have.
Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of our Planet LA interview series. I'm joined by the very talented AJ Smith. AJ, thank you so much for stopping by.
Happy to be here.
I'm just going to jump right into it. I got a few questions for you. So for starters, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where are you from, and how did you really get into music in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. Born in Denver, Colorado. Grew up 2 doors down from my godmother, who was a piano teacher. So from an early age, was listening to music, ran away from home in order to go listen to piano lessons. And then finally, my parents were like, that's not safe. You can't be just doing that on your own. So I was like 3. They put me in piano lessons with my godmother. And it kind of just kept on going from there. My dad was in the circus growing up, not as a performer, but on the business side. So he traveled a lot and brought me around. So I got to be around the showbiz from an early age, which is pretty cool. Getting to hang out with the lions, tigers, and not bears, but elephants. Oh my! And that was pretty cool. And so then that I guess that kind of turned into wanting to be a showman. And when the opportunity came, I went up to NYU to study music in New York City. So moved there and started going after it pretty hard. While I was there, I got to open for the Eagles at the Beacon Theater, and then hit my first solo tour, opened for Lindsey Sterling, a bunch of other stuff, released my first EP, my second EP. And then since then, I've just been writing and grinding and getting music out into the universe.
So I've heard a rumor that you play multiple instruments. Could you tell me a little bit, what instrument did you start with? How many do you play? What made you want to learn so many, and how does that affect your music style?
Yeah, for sure. So I started on piano, and then after that, my parents took me to go see, have you ever heard of Yanni? Probably not. Yeah, he's he's this concert pianist and composer and all of that, Greek musician. And my parents took me to go see him, and he had, the orchestra with him, and this woman was playing solo violin up with him. And it was just, I was 5, but it was my first concert that I ever remember going to. And it was at Red Rocks in Colorado. And I just remember being blown away, and the next day I go to my mom, and I fell asleep at the concert because I was 5. I go to my mom and I'm like, Mom, can I play violin? And she was like, okay, we can stop piano lessons. I was like, no, I want to do both. And threw a temper tantrum probably. So she was like, geez, kids, they have no concept of money. They have no idea how instruments and lessons work. We'll figure it out. And yeah, so then I started violin, ended up fiddling in a bluegrass band, all that kind of stuff, played in orchestra. I got into the American Youth Philharmonic, and then I became an associate to the National Symphony Orchestra down in DC, which was awesome. And then it kind of just kept on rocking in middle school, in elementary school, similar to you, learning guitar. So I was asked to be in a band, and they were like, hey, do you know how to play drums? And it was my one opportunity to hang with the cool kids. So I was like, yes, and I didn't know how to play drums. So I just showed up with a pair of drumsticks, and I was like, I'll figure it out as I go. And totally lied, but whatever, it was fun. And ended up learning drums from that. And then I was sitting there, and I was like, wait, the guitar is singing up front. I want to be up front. I don't want to be stuck behind this drum set. And yeah, so then I started learning guitar, and yeah, so it just kind of spiraled. I play piano, violin, guitar, drums, bass, mandolin, ukulele, banjo. I'm probably forgetting something, but sing mostly stringed instruments is cheating.
Yeah, I mean,
once you know one, it's easy to learn that.
Well, when you know 6 string instruments, that is not easy. So moving away from instruments, talking about your songwriting process. I saw on Instagram the other day that your song "Cooler" was nominated for as a semifinalist in the International Songwriting Competition. That's awesome! Congratulations.
Thank you.
What would you say is kind of when you sit down, you're writing a song. What's your process? How do you start? I think a lot of like young songwriters, that's like, where do you begin? Like, what would your advice be to them as well?
Yeah. First thing is that I always keep a running list of titles on my phone. Or like ideas or concepts. So, you know, look for inspiration everywhere. I read a lot, or I listen to a lot. I mean, even if you're just like watching something on TV and that character says a quote and you're like, oh, dang, that was super deep. I like that. Then like I'll go and type that quote to my phone. And then usually what I do is I try to set aside a certain amount of time per day just to like read back through that and then see if any melodies come to mind. Record some voice memos and like that kind of stuff. That's usually how it starts. And then in terms of like the writing process, because I'm also a producer, my writing process is very, usually I used to just sit down with like a guitar and a notebook, but I don't do that anymore. Now I will start producing the song like right away, where I'll create a loop, and I'll kind of write to a loop. It lets my hands be a little bit more free and kind of lets me focus more on like lyric and melody, which is kind of nice. But then, you know, like the danger of that is that then you're getting married to whatever that loop was. So it's also important to like stop it here and there and then like maybe play it out yourself and then experiment with the harmony and like that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Just talking about Cooler for a minute, I know that it's about your girlfriend and meeting on Bumble. Like, how exactly what is like what made you want to write a song about that? Like, what do you think that, like, what kind of story is that in your life? Like, what does the song mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I do my songs are for my artist project usually extremely personal. So, you know, what on the bright side and on the not so bright side. This one is the super bright, nervous, quirky moment, right? Like that, those first date jitters, not knowing how it's gonna go, and really, I wanted my girlfriend to like me, because you're not hearing this between now and Sunday, right? So I'm proposing on Sunday.
Oh wow, that's amazing!
Yeah,
congratulations.
Wait, I hope she can't hear me. She's like 6 floors up, right? I'm proposing this week. So I mean, I'm super amped about that. And yeah, so I mean, like, Cooler is the song that I wrote about our first date. You know, wanting her to think that I was cool. When in reality, I'm just gonna be like a slightly quirky, awkward dude.
Just in terms of like the pandemic and everything that's been going on, what have you been doing to like stay in contact with your friends, be involved in the community and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of being involved in the music community is just keeping going with Zoom rights. At the beginning of the pandemic, I like jumped on live streaming right away. And I was inviting my songwriter friends to hop on Instagram Live and all of that with me. I was doing a weekly live stream on YouTube, all of that for my fans, for my friends, for my family. I got kind of burned out from that, and I felt like I wasn't actually creating enough. I was performing a lot, but not creating. And I kind of was like, wait a second, like, I'm not having to tour right now, so why am I doing that to myself? Instead, I should be creating during this time when like the pressure isn't on to be touring and playing all of these shows. So I kind of put a stop on that, and I just started writing a ton. And I've written so many songs, produced so many songs, and I did a lot of parody things with my girlfriend, which were super fun. We got on Good Morning America, which was pretty rad. I wrote and released that song Billy Joel, which Billy Joel heard, and theoretically, if touring comes back, he might need to perform with him.
Amazing.
So, you know, cool stuff.
Yeah, I know you also shot a music video during the pandemic, Confetti, like that. And then I remember you telling me more about that at that Christmas party, and how you guys were like double masking, and it was shot from the feet below.
Yeah.
So that must have been like a crazy process, like shooting a music video in the middle of the pandemic. Like, why not, right?
Yeah, and trying to figure out how to do it in like a safe way that's not going to be like, oh, this was shot during COVID, you know?
Well, it came out great because we weren't able to see. You know, the aesthetic was there because it seemed like, you couldn't see anyone's face, so everyone's wearing masks. And didn't you say you also had like, it looked like there was like a ton of feet, like a ton of like people like dancing, stuff like that. But it was the same like five
I wore
people.
like 4 different pairs of shoes. Yeah, I wore like 4 different pairs of shoes and pants. So like as far as anybody was concerned, it was like a party of 20, but there were only like 5.
That's awesome. That's great. And like that's the kind of creativity that like you have to adapt to during this pandemic, and that's awesome. I think also something that's big about this pandemic is it's increased a lot of like much needed attention towards like mental health. What would you say, what does mental health mean to you, and like how do you think that's like affected you during this pandemic and whatnot?
So it's actually, we were just talking about Confetti, and that's a song that I wrote shortly after having a really bad anxiety attack that put me in the hospital. It was pretty rough. And that was about a year ago, actually, over a year ago. And that was pretty intense. And so then like I wrote that song about, it's pretty uplifting, right? Because I've never been good about celebrating the little moments, and instead of taking those small victories, I can sometimes view them almost as not big enough, and that can be kind of damaging, right? Especially in this whole like comparing culture where people are constantly holding themselves up against others and other people's success, as opposed to just celebrating their own moments of success, whatever is happening in their lives, and that's something that I struggle with constantly, and so that's why I wrote Confetti, is to kind of remind myself like, hey, it feels really good when I'm not like letting myself get sucked into that, and the isolation component, I've been really lucky to go through this with to get to quarantine with my family and my girlfriend's family, and my dog, and that's been awesome. But I know that a lot of one of my best friends, he lives out in LA by himself, and it's been like a super isolating experience with him. So I've been on like the phone or FaceTime with him like many times a week, just kind of keeping him company. But I think the positive that has come out of this, even though it's maybe shed some light on some of the internal struggles that a lot of us have, that maybe we could cope with or hide just in the hustle and bustle of quote unquote normal life, is that it's that nobody's really alone in going through this, and that there is a community of people who are now most people are very vocal about making sure that everybody has that support system, and whether that support system is your family or if it's your friends or whatever it is, I think more people are empathetic towards that now, hopefully. I don't know, it's hard to tell. 2020 was pretty rough, and people's empathy as a barometer of where we are in the world was maybe not the best metric, but but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, that's great. Yeah, it's really important, right, to try to stay positive throughout everything. And one thing I like to say is I wouldn't have found Planet LA if this pandemic wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be working here. We probably wouldn't be having this conversation, right? So I like to look at the positives, and you said you should try a little harder to look into celebrate the little things in life, and I think that's really important. So that's great. Cool. So back once again on the pandemic, walk me through your day right now, especially throughout the past year. What has kind of been your a day in the life of AJ Smith? Walk me through what a typical day looks like.
So typically it would be getting up, doing just some regular work type stuff. I build websites, all that kind of stuff. And then I would do administrative things, checking in on my music administrative stuff that nobody really thinks about and isn't exciting about the music industry usually. And then I have an afternoon session, and then I'll usually spend the rest of the day kind of producing, working on that, shooting content, all of that kind of stuff, collaborating with my girlfriend, voice lessons, all that kind of, practicing all of that, shooting videos. Lately, my life has not been like that. One of my good friends, he has his family's medical practice, up in Chicago got into the vaccination effort in terms of equitably distributing the vaccine in Chicago. And so he actually called on me to help with some of the logistics and operations of all of that. And because I do a lot of technology stuff on the side, then like, I mean, you know, as a musician, like I've always used a lot of technology in what I do. So he called on me for that, and they needed volunteers to help run some of these vaccination sites and everything like that. So I've actually been working a lot. I've gone up to Chicago and been helping get people vaccinated and go out to communities that were otherwise being overlooked, and getting vaccines into the arms of people who need it most. And right after this call, I'm actually happy to talk about how we can keep doing that better and get people into their second doses. So yeah, it's been a little wild the last couple of weeks. Very different, but you know, it feels good to be I don't know, doing something to help bring about the end of this thing.
But yeah, that's pretty much all the questions that I have for you. Make sure to go listen to AJ on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. His Instagram is AJ Smith Music. Closer's coming out soon, right? Cooler. Excuse me.
Cooler?
It's coming out soon. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't say when just yet.
Okay.
But yes.
I'm so dang freaking nervous, and I hope I like your answer. Do you wanna be